Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream panel discussion for this, a Friday, May 8th, 2026. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, as usual, well, not as usual, sometimes, is the sensational Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm doing great. I'm just going to give you a warning. I can't go too long on the show today. I'm shooting on a documentary on Western independence. Not a Rebel News documentary, but just a documentary in general, and being a generational Western separatist and acclaimed separatist author. I believe that's why they want to talk to me. So we can't go too long today, but I should tell everybody what we're doing, because I want to make sure we have as much time as possible with our guest, who is a familiar face to many Rebel viewers. So if you're watching the show on Rumble, that's a great free speech platform. If you want to support the work that we do here at Rebel News while having your say, you can leave a Rumble rant. That's their pay chat over there. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, you're seeing it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our very best, time permitting, to get to it. If you are watching us on YouTube, where we are just shockingly remain remonetized there. Their paid chat is called a super chat. And if you missed the live version of the show, but you really want to support the little network that'll never take a penny from the government, you can leave a super thanks. That's a paid comment over there. So David, I think that's it. I think we should bring in our guest.
You know what, folks? They say the month of March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. Well, our guest is never a lamb, always a lion, which is kind of ironic giving her surname. She is from all the way from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Kelly Lamb. How you doing there, Kelly?
Your intros, David.
I know.
Epic. Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing great.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Kelly. It's always a pleasure. And I guess, Sheila, did you want to lead the discussion? Because I know you have to leave early.
I want to leave early too. That way.
Not because I have anything to do, mind you, but because I have the stomach ache, the mother of all stomach aches. And this has made me aware that I know you ladies don't care about a guy having a stomach ache, but, and you know, in this day and age of women still being the pregnant ones, because my point of view is if men had to give birth, we're looking at the extinction event for our species. We're such wimps when it comes to pain.
Bunch of babies.
So Sheila, you take it away, my friend.
Yes, and I do feel safer when I'm driving the show, especially with David Menzies. For those of you who don't know, Kelly used to be a regular contributor to Rebel News. Now she's done a little bit of freelance work for us, and we're just so happy to have her back. Let's get into the first video. Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference is happening right now, and it's in Ottawa. Some of you may know this as its former iteration, the Manning Center Conference. And I don't think they've quite read the room with regard to how conservatives feel about self-flagellating before the beginning of every conference. And the room let them hear what they thought. So they started off their conference with a land acknowledgement, and just listen for the audible groans from what I understand is a sparsely attended crowd. Let's watch.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. I hope you had a great day yesterday. I would like to begin by recognizing that we're meeting on the never surrendered homeland of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, a land of spirit and purity, of healing plants and sacred waters provided to the people by Creator since time immemorial. My name is Dr. Margot Burnell. I'm a medical oncologist from New Brunswick and the president of the Canadian Medical Association. Good morning, everyone.
Okay. I would have felt a little better about this if they had been able to find somebody other than a white upper middle class doctor lady to say the land acknowledgement. But I don't feel good about this actually at all. I mean, stop this. We've seen where land acknowledgements have led in British Columbia, and now we have Indigenous bands from Alaska claiming territory in northern British Columbia. Can we just stop this performative nonsense? We're all here in Canada together. Can we just stop these statements of division at the beginning of everything. Do I have to acknowledge the prior? Oh, wait, no. We've been here since 1903. But do you have to like give a real estate listing of everybody who owned your house before you give thanks at Thanksgiving? Like, it's just crazy. Kelly?
Oh, you're getting me started on a fiery rant already. I don't get it. There's two issues with me. The first is obviously the legal implications and what this means, because as we're seeing with different disputes in BC, it is performative, but then it also has this, okay, if you don't belong here, if this isn't really yours, you're just a visitor and you don't have any real say to any of this. So there's this sense of what it means legally in the future for anything from property rights to whatever else you want to kind of get into that, whether it's parks, whatever it is, land rights. Then there's the idea of how confusing it is for kids and just making people feel guilty for just being born here and doing nothing wrong. But then there's the fact that it's just silly. Even if you do prescribe to this concept and this ideology, and you just feel so bad for this stolen land, doing this doesn't actually fix anything. So you're telling someone you stole their stuff, you're not going to give it back. You're just going to say it really nicely, make yourself feel better. It's just a virtuous pat on the back. It's completely performative. Meanwhile, it doesn't fix anything at all, and it just causes racial tension and division. And any of the actual issues we see on First Nations reserves, like I live in PA, we have 40% plus First Nation and Métis people here. There's issues here. There's all kinds of tension. There's all kinds of societal issues, drug addiction, violence. None of this will go anywhere with this kind of stuff. It just makes it worse. So I could go on forever, but I just think land acknowledgements they're not just silly, they're damaging, but they certainly don't fix anything. They just make the people that say them sound and feel better about themselves. And why does she have to sound so new agey? As a former new age weirdo, that was weird. The spirits. Oh, the spirits. Okay, great.
And there are real world implications. I saw this yesterday. This is from Rob Shaw. He's a journalist in British Columbia. BC Park says Joffrey Lakes Provincial Park near Pemberton will close to non-Indigenous people from June 20th to 27th and September 8th to 30th to allow First Nations to practice cultural and conservation traditions. Has been policy for several years, but could be contentious in current climate. I didn't even know that they were doing this, but this is crazy. Are the parks for everybody? I thought they were. I'll preface this by saying I don't believe in parks. And I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think we should get permission from the government to use land that we're all supposed to be able to use and we all kind of own in parks. So I don't like the idea of parks at all. I think there should be intense jail time for littering and not following the rules on public land. But I don't even like the idea of parks, let alone racially segregated parks. Like I thought we were against racial segregation, but this new version of it is particularly fine with the left. They're like, yes, that's really good. Look how great we are to the Indigenous people. And in the meantime, they don't have clean drinking water or houses or anything like that. This doesn't solve any problems whatsoever.
Well, Sheila, before I begin, I would like to first of all do my native land acknowledgement. I want to recognize the Indians of Cleveland, the Redskins of Washington, the Eskimos of Edmonton, and of course, the last of the Mohicans. Thank you very much. Here's the deal. To Kelly's point, I think natives that aren't part of the victim manufacturing syndrome, the ones living on the reserve, they see through this bullshit as what it is, virtue signaling. Yeah. Why don't we do something about, what is it, almost 50 reserves that are under boil advisory for clean drinking water?
It's upwards of 90, David.
It's
I know
90.
You mentioned, it's depending on which day of the week and what the problem is. It's upwards of 90. I know you did a story on this the other day and you quoted 50. So I was like, is that the right number? Because I have to make sure that you're not making an ass of yourself on TV, and it's actually much higher.
That is sad that I have to be corrected that way because obviously obviously the problem is far worse than I thought. So instead of doing this land acknowledgement, why don't we do something tangible to make life better on the reserve? And I know that's complicated, but nevertheless, Sheila, to your point, racially segregating parks, you know, my beloved Lady Menzies in the 1970s fled South Africa. Why? The odious system of apartheid. Depending on what race you were, you got different kind of privileges. I mean, it's so perverse when you look at apartheid. It reminds me of the Jerry Seinfeld line that if professional wrestling didn't exist, it would be impossible to invent it, okay? And that was what apartheid was. It's amazing that the left, going back to yesterdecade, when they made South Africa a global pariah, couldn't go to the Olympics, couldn't go to the World Cup. You were part of the original BDS movement. It was for all the right reasons. It's odious to segregate people based on race, but the new left, they love racial segregation. They love New Age apartheid as long as the apartheid is being done against, well, essentially, white people for the most part. So I don't see how this is advancing the narrative of truth and reconciliation. And again, to your point, also, ladies, of the longer we keep acknowledging that we're on unceded, or I love that line. I never heard this one. Never surrendered land. Well, what are you talking about? Of course it's surrendered. We found out the hard way that guns beat bows and arrows. Case over. But moving forward in terms of truth and reconciliation, if you're going to have municipalities come to you and say, hey, Sheila, hey, Kelly, I know you've been working your butt off for the last 30 years paying off your mortgage. Guess what? You might not own this property. That will send truth and reconciliation back 150 years. You're looking at potential civil war when you go to taxpayers saying everything you work for, all that blood, sweat, and tears to pay off your house one brick at a time every week, it is now going to be surrendered without compensation. Are you kidding me? And all I'm saying is when you keep saying, yeah, this isn't our land, you're giving the lawyers for the Indigenous a basis in which to get that agenda fulfilled.
Yeah, it's quite a, it sets a precedence that's not going to fix anything, causes nothing but problems. And honestly, this is so insulting. If I was an Indigenous person, I would find this so deeply insulting. It's like a pat on the head. They just infantilize any minority. The left is so brutal. They think they're so virtuous, but they just treat everybody like a monolith. Heaven forbid you have your own independent thoughts. Heaven forbid you don't agree with land acknowledgements. As we see people that try to speak out against this, they get called every name in the book. It's absolutely wild to me, the moral self-righteousness, sense of superiority that these people have while just speaking their weird little word salads that don't do anything and half the time are inaccurate. I know I did a chronic pain clinic in Saskatchewan, and they would start each of the education sessions with this land acknowledgement, and they would say it was unceded, which I don't even think is actually correct. I'm pretty sure in Saskatchewan it's quite a bit different than in BC.
Yeah,
it was ceded, and so you're not even being factual, and it's insulting, it's demeaning, it's dangerous. And as you said, David, the irony of it is you're setting back your own movement. Any progress we've made, you've just annihilated it, because now you're just making people angry and you have a low trust society. Where do you think that's going to go?
And you know what? I'd like to put this national park or provincial park apartheid to the test, ladies, which is when it is implemented, why don't we send a trans person to the park and say, hey, I'm a trans woman, man. You'll see the the clutching of pearls reach a new level, because these are two of the uber protected classes in our society today. Are you going to tell that transgender, no, you can't come in either? That would be a fascinating social experiment, I should think.
Just before we move on, because we spent a fair bit of time on this, Kelly is right when she says, and I'm glad you used the word, the Indigenous people are not a monolith. I've got a story coming out later, I think it's today, maybe it's coming out over the weekend, of some exclusive polling for Act for Alberta. That's my third-party advertiser involved in the Western Independence campaign. And we spent a fair bit of money on some polling data. And you would be, well, maybe you wouldn't be, would be surprised at the sentiments of Indigenous people compared to the sentiment of the general population when it comes to Western independence. So the thing about all of this is that there are like 5 activist chiefs who claim to speak for everybody, and they just don't. They really just don't. Let's move ahead real quick. We've got Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner doing what she does best and blasting the Liberal Party for treating its immigration department like the armpit of cabinet. And it is the most troubled department, I think, immigration and finance. Rempel-Garner says, there's nobody in charge, no management within the Liberal immigration system. This is at Canada Strong and Free.
This is a question of political will and management. So if we're going to talk about process, like, immigration is one of the most important ministries in government. It is one of the most, you have to have one of your best players, your top performers in that role. And the Liberal government has treated it like the armpit of cabinet. I have been through, 8 ministers? And 9? I can't keep track. And that, to me, and why? Because what I've seen happen since, over the last decade is no management. There's nobody in charge. Like how did they issue a visa to a terrorist? Like, this is a ministerial permit. How was nobody fired over this? Like, I'm sorry, this is my cathartic rant. I do not understand how nobody has been hauled in after that Auditor General report. Like, to me, they're like, former management consultant hat on. This is a process fix. But to have a process fix, you need to have somebody saying, no, we will not tolerate this. Then you have less fraud. Then you have less trying to game the system because people understand that there's consequences. There's a whole other conversation to be had about the justice system right now, like the courts and non-citizens who have been convicted of serious crimes in Canada getting sweetheart deals in order to avoid the consequences that have been set out in the laws for decades. But to me, this is fundamentally a management solve, and I have not seen any competency. And I'm so passionate about this because it has been such a fundamental issue for this country. But just shame on Mark Carney right now for not hiring somebody competent.
I think she's right on all the points, but she is, this is one of those rare instances where like when they say, oh, don't presume malice when stupidity will do. I think we should actually presume malice in this case. There's a reason why they're putting the stupidest people at immigration is because they don't want an immigration fix. Mark Carney has hired people around him from the Century Initiative, which wants 100 million people bunging up our beautiful country. This is the goal. Don't presume incompetence here. They are doing exactly the job that Mark Carney wants them to do, and that's absolutely nothing. Just let everybody in. Kelly?
I think you've said it best. I don't have a lot to add. I mean, yeah, government's incompetent. I think that's pretty standard, and I would say the Liberals have been proving that for quite a while now. So sure, there's incompetence, but I would agree that in this case, it goes beyond that. I don't think you can argue that this seems a little bit fishy. Carney's connections, Trudeau's connections, him, back even just to Trudeau's days when he was trying to get a seat on the UN Security Council. I mean, there's so many points that are showing the evidence of this that no, it's not just an accident. So yeah, I'd agree with you on that, Sheila.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Immigration, out of control immigration, open borders, it's fixable. Look what the Americans are doing. Mm-hmm. They've got ICE. They're deporting people. They're incentivizing people to self-deport with a cash payment and a teddy bear and going home without the new bracelets, if you know what I mean. They can actually turn themselves in and then leave. So there are ways to get a handle on the fact that you have millions of people who shouldn't be in your country and who have gamed the system. And through poor administrative choices, either purposeful or just through incompetence. There are ways that you can fix it. They're just not doing like a single one of them. And so you have to wonder, well, why aren't you doing anything at all? David?
Well, Sheila, you talk about an immigration fix. I'm looking at it from the opposite point of view, which is the fix is in.
Yeah.
Mass migration is the goal. What's the reason for that? The unspoken strategy? It's simply this. We know from the last election and previous elections, the biggest base for the Liberals are the baby boomers, right? We know that the oldest baby boomers are now entering their 80s. Now, the Liberals are evil, but they're not stupid. So they see this base declining and eventually going away. What do we do to replace that base? We let in the world's impoverished. We tell them, take advantage of all of our social programs. Try to pursue the Canadian dream. All we ask in return is that every 4 years you go and you check Team Red. There's your wink, wink, nudge, nudge immigration policy. I truly believe that's what's in effect here. It was the same under the Biden Democrats. An estimated 21 million illegals in 4 years got across the southern border. Why? Well, if we can turn red states blue, purple or even blue, and if that happens in Texas, it's a Democrat government in the White House in perpetuity. There's your answer. And you know, ladies, just look at the video we put up yesterday. We went to a former Comfort Inn in Pickering, Ontario, and illegal aliens are being accommodated there. The vast majority, from what I could tell, were from the Middle East or Africa. And we approached one African man. He's from Ethiopia, because you see, you're limited to 90 days in the hotel. And when I was speaking with Councillor Lisa Robinson, we were under the false proviso that when your 90 days is up, well, then what do? Do you go see a shelter, assuming there's space? Do you then live in a tent city? So just making that problem worse. And oh my God, we broke some news, didn't we? This man in that late model Toyota RAV4 told us he used to be in the hotel. He left. He is now in a government-funded house. The average house rent in Pickering is $2,650. He had 2 kids in that SUV. It looked brand new to me. I could smell the new car smell. That's a Toyota RAV4. That's probably 60 grand off the lot. He also mentioned he does not have a job. And I don't know if he has a skill set. So I say at all of our border crossings and at all of our international airports, we put a sign for newcomers. And this is what it says: welcome to Canada, penalizing the makers, rewarding the takers.
Well, and this sort of stuff is why on October 19th, Danielle Smith has advanced some referendum questions asking Albertans, like, hey, should we stop giving these people money? I'm assuming the answer is going to be an overwhelming yes on Immigration Day, or on referendum day on those immigration questions. There's 10 of them, actually, because they stop coming if you stop giving them money. It's really that simple, right? So even if you don't want to round them up and kick them out, I do, by the way. I just want to say that. I do. But even if you don't want to be the happy bus driver picking up all the expired permit holders and taking them to the airport like I want to be, even if you don't want that, if you stop giving them money, they won't come in the first place, and they just might self-deport in the end. So, you know, it's a benefit 2 ways.
But Sheila, if I made one final exclamation point, look at every benchmark these past 10 years with the Liberals in charge in terms of economics. And I'm talking about inflation, the cost of living, homelessness, food bank usage. All those metrics are soaring. So how do we win the war on poverty? By importing the world's impoverished. And I go back to my unspoken strategy of the Liberals. It's because this is a new base. The Liberals are putting party before country.
When have they not? You know, like historically, when have they not? Like, why are you acting like that's a new concept, David? Like, it's always been that way.
I think the stakes are so much higher now,
For
Sheila.
sure they are. Yeah.
That's why.
I just want to move ahead. Also, I believe this is from Canada Strong and Free, where we have Alexa Lavoie and Tamara Leach on the ground there. Pierre Poilievre blasts the Carney Liberals for crippling Canada's energy sector and failing to build new pipelines. Should be noted that there has been a pipeline approved, but it's to the United States. It's not to export to international markets. So that doesn't directly address the problem with Western Canadian Select versus West Texas Intermediate pricing. However, it's still a pipeline. And for all the Liberals preening about, oh, we need to have a carbon tax because the rest of the world only wants to buy low carbon oil. The world's largest consumer of oil and gas is like, the hell you do. Like, give us that oil. So whatever. Let's listen to this because I have a statistic that I always crank out for this. When we complain that we can't get anything built in this country, I always use a historic example, but I'll get to that afterwards.
He has not eliminated the carbon tax. He's given it a new name, the Clean Fuel Standard, all while forcing our industry to pay the only industrial carbon tax of any oil-producing country, a tax that Enbridge and Cenovus both say will make it impossible to produce enough oil to ever go in a future Pacific pipeline. The illusion was that he was going to build faster than anybody than we had seen in generations. Yet he has not removed a single Trudeau-era anti-development law. He did not pass a single. He did pass a new law that allows him to go around the old laws, but he's not used that new law to approve a single solitary project. And speaking of the illusion of the Pacific Pipeline, it still has no route, no permit, no builder, no investor, no start point, no end point, no starting date, no end date. And Mr. Carney was asked if he even supports building a pipeline to the Pacific, which is, by the way, the only route that will get us around the United States to diversify our market. A pipeline, by the way, that would allow us to export $30 billion of our crude overseas, which would mean that more value would go through that pipe than we sell to China every single year. And he was asked if he supported. His answer was like something out of Dr. Seuss. He said, so all that lines up to, it's more likely than not, which means more probable than possible, but none of that is to say certain. Still a lot of work to be done. Anybody want some green eggs and ham?
Hickory dickory dock. Oh!
No, don't, David. No. So Carney's been in for a year. We've had the MOU for months. The only deal we have is with the Americans, and I'm happy for it. By the way, I'm real happy. It's a big win for Hardisty, Alberta, and all the guys who work in upstream oil and gas. Production is up, but I just want to give you some context. David, I've used this statistic before on the show, so maybe you already know, so don't answer it if you do. How long did it take to build the Alaska Highway in 1942? 2,700 kilometers.
I believe it was the same amount of time it took to build Maple Leaf Gardens in 1931. 8 months.
8 months, exactly. So if there's a will, there is a way. There's no will. That's the thing here. You can't say that, oh, we can't build these things. We built a lot of things in the past that were of national and international importance, and we moved at warp speed if you want to.
Yes.
They just don't want to.
No.
Yeah.
And Sheila, you see that? I was just driving down Black Creek Drive. I think for a year now, they've been doing some kind of road repair. Sometimes the right lane's closed, merge left. Sometimes the left lane is closed. What are they doing? It like you said, it took less time to build the entire Alaskan highway. You know, like this is outrageous. I think we probably have an additional problem of union employees ragging the puck, especially when you're working for the public sector when there is no accountability. But, you know, I mean, when Pierre Poilievre says, Enbridge and Cenovus, they say under the current mandate, these are not viable projects. Well, what do they know? Let's refer to Mark Carney's book, Values, to see how things should proceed. And, ladies, speaking to Poilievre and energy, I know I've brought this example up many times. Last April, during the election, we went to his presser at the Port of St. John in St. John, New Brunswick, and I think that is like the second busiest port in all of Canada. And Pierre Poilievre made the profound point that that was going to be the final destination for Energy East pipeline. Yep. And think of the win-win-win. First of all those great jobs building the pipeline. Secondly, the pipeline exporting every day 1.2 million barrels of oil. And third, how the Liberals, especially under Carney, we need new markets. We can no longer depend on the United States. Guess what? Every single drop of that oil going out of the Port of St. John was destined to Europe. Win, yep. Win, win. And I say to people in New Brunswick, if you didn't vote Conservative in the last election, go see a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I'll go to Kelly.
I wish Mr. Lamb, I wish my husband Steve was doing this segment, because this is his passion. He was an oil and gas guy for years, and now he works in forestry. So the whole concept of the natural resource world in Canada and the chains it's been under, and even now the threats that it still is under, it doesn't need to be this way. As Sheila said, where there's a will, there is a way. We have the capacity to get all of these projects done. We don't need to be throttling ourselves financially, economically, the way that we are. And again, the irony, I have to always bring up the irony with the leftist viewpoint. It's just the same as it is with the First Nations land acknowledgement, where they think they're doing the right thing, but they're causing more harm. If you want to build social programs and have all this great healthcare and help all these poor people and do all these wonderful leftist things, you need money. And you need industry, and you need people to stay here. You can't be bleeding industry, overtaxing, over-regulating, and putting out bills, as Pierre said, that they haven't actually turned over. They haven't gotten rid of them yet. We have so many angles that this is being throttled at, and so many of them are behind the scenes. When you work in resource industry, you see they're just held back. Everybody's so held back, and it's so insane, because we should be one of the most prosperous, richest nations, and we should be able to actually have that robust social system as well as a robust economy, because the two go hand in hand. So yeah, it should be a no-brainer, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. That's the irony of it. You want to help people, build the pipelines, get things moving, use our resources. You can do it safely. We have environmental laws in place that are extremely strict. And it drives me crazy that we're not seeing this from a more logical point of view for the sake of just partisanship, I guess, and whatever else is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And you know something, Sheila, to illustrate how outrageous your example is of the Alaskan Highway being built in only 8 months, and I presume they were blasting through bedrock in order to get that done. Look at in Toronto, just earlier this year, the Eglinton Crosstown LRT opened up. 5 years late, in other words, it took 13 years, $1 billion over budget, to lay 19 kilometers of track, most of it above ground. Like less than half is underground. How can you possibly justify that, given your Alaskan example? I don't know where to begin. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a construction worker, but I don't know how it's humanly possible to rag the puck that long.
Look at the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Years late and like 800% over budget once the government got involved. So, if they would just make the conditions appropriate for the private sector to be able to do their jobs efficiently, we would not have any of these problems. But here we are. Before we say bye to Kelly, I want to talk about Jason Kenney. So he was on, I think it was Power and Politics the other day, the flagship CBC show that nobody watches with David Cochrane. And no one would know who David Cochrane is if it weren't for how viscerally disliked he is by independent journalists in this country. But Jason Kenney was on there because he's the new face of federalism. And and I hope he never stops, because he misread the anger of Albertans once and got himself thrown out on his ass. So as a separatist, Never shut up, Jason Kenney. We can't get enough of you. But he has sort of injected himself into this discussion now, instead of going away in shame and never showing his face in polite company ever again. And he is angry that there are separatists involved in other political parties. I've got some news for him, just again, based on Act for Alberta internal polling that I'll refer to after we show this clip, and then we'll react to it. And then I know Kelly had a tweet about Jason Kenney and just how vicious and Trudeau-esque he's being these days to people who used to be his most ardent supporters. So anyways, let's watch how he's making the case for federalism to David Cochrane, of all people. Can you imagine how many Albertans were glued to their TV screens when this aired?
Look, I think any responsible leader should make it clear that those folks have, if they're committed to tearing the country apart, they don't have a place in a pro-Canada party. And, you know, they have their own separatist parties. Why are they trying to infiltrate a Federalist Party? There's one reason, because it's the party in power, and because they can't get elected on a separatist ticket. In 50 years, contesting over 24 federal and provincial elections, in over 1,600 riding elections, they have only ever won one in a by-election in 1982 at the height of the National Energy Program, a seat that they lost 6 months later.
Right.
So I would say, look, folks, you've got a point of view. In a democracy, you can express it. Put it on the ballot and test it. You've been doing that for 50 years and failing, so you don't get to take over a governing party that was elected on a mandate of federalism. But look, I think any responsible...
I've got news for him. Roughly 60% of UCP supporters are ardent separatists, and roughly 60% of Conservative Party voters federally in Alberta are separatists. And that's from our polling data at Act for Alberta. We hired a very professional polling firm to get that for us. So he can froth at the mouth all he wants, but nobody's infiltrating the Conservative Party of Canada. They've always been there. They see you guys as appropriate caretakers, but for a lot of people, and we saw this when the Republican Party ran in Olds in the by-election there, people agree that we should leave the country, but they're not going to risk the NDP running up the middle. We did that for 4 years. It was hell. It was nothing but a series of layoffs and oil and gas obstructionist policies, and the early phase out of coal, which has left us with, you know, the threat of rolling brownouts every time it gets too hot or too cold in this oil and gas and coal rich province. So nobody's infiltrating anything. They've always been there. And this is not a party movement of Western separatism. It's outside the party system. And Danielle Smith is taking the right tone when she says, look, I'm a federalist, but I don't dismiss the anger of Albertans, and I'm letting them have their say, not telling them to shut up and get out like Jason Kenney. He's the best advocate for Western separatism. I just hope he just blabs to the CBC for months to come. Kelly, go ahead.
So, well, you'll see my thoughts on Kenney in my ex post, which he's just an insufferable human being. And as you said, Sheila, though, it's actually beautiful because he is hated by all sides, all parties. He's just a deeply unlikable jerk. And he's so condescending. His behavior during COVID was absolutely deplorable. He was an absolute hypocrite. So there's just nothing good there. So yeah, blab on. No one's going to appreciate you. You're actually helping the cause. So I'm with you there 100%. The issue here, as you said, is these words like, oh, you're infiltrating the party. Now, I'm a Saskatchewan, so I'm not going to try to speak for Albertans, but y'all are my sister province. I love you guys. I've been a separatist as well because there's a lot of Saskatchewaners who are also very much tired of the Ottawa nonsense. We might not have as big or as organized of a movement, but it's growing. And I've always held this. My husband's always held this. I haven't really considered myself a proud Canadian for a very long time. I don't fly the Canadian flag anymore. I fly the Saskatchewan flag. I just don't have any connection outside of paying my taxes and holding a Canadian passport. I don't feel it. It's not there. My grandfather was okay with being out of all this. You know, my dad was okay with being out of all this. There's lots of us that have been ideologically separatists and ideologically feeling alienated for a long time. We feel like we're in an abusive marriage and you can't get out. It's not because we don't love our country. We did, or we do, but that doesn't mean we can stay. We're being beat up, essentially. You can't stay, even if you love the person. It doesn't matter. And we're not infiltrating anything. I mean, I ran for the PPC, which was a federalist party, but I did so because I liked the part of the policies that spoke about provincial autonomy. And we need more provincial autonomy if we're going to actually get out of this. And because that's never going to happen federally, and we see the writing on the wall, fine, okay, I'm a separatist then. What else are we supposed to do? But no one's infiltrating anything. Like you said, we've always been there. And the Albertans that feel this way have always been there. They were trying to make it work however they could federally, but it's a bust. And I think people are just done fighting. They've realized this is never going to work. They see the writing on the wall and they're out. So no, it's not some big conspiracy theory. These are just normal people. And shutting them up and shutting them down and turning your nose up at them is exactly the reason that separatists want to leave in the first place. We're tired of elitism. We love you, David. We love you Easterners that are on our side. But this, decentralized 3,000 kilometer away government full of attitude and hubris is what's caused this problem in the first place. And he's the perfect face of it, even though he's from Alberta. It's wild.
Oh, Kelly, you need not apologize to me. I'm totally on your team. I lived in Alberta in 85 and 86. I think the question to Albertans, it's not what Jason Kenney is saying, like, how could you possibly be a separatist? I think the question is, how could you possibly be a federalist, given the way you are disrespected? I think of Albertans every time, at least in the last decade, there's a federal election, and by the time the ballots are counted going forward from the Ontario-Manitoba border, it's all over, baby. And all those pipeline dreams and economic development, it's already dead even before your votes are counted. How can you support that? So yes, I lived there in 85 and 86. I found Alberta to be the most gung-ho American-style province of all the provinces I've ever lived or visited in. And they have these clampers on them that I don't see what the upside is when it comes to a federal election. And Sheila, let me defer to you. For those Albertans that are still proudly flying the Canadian flag going, nope, this is where we got to be. I mean, are they masochists? I mean, what is driving that thought?
Nostalgia, I think. And nostalgia doesn't build an economy. Like, I am too nostalgic for the Canada of my youth, but there are very few places where the Canada of my youth exists anymore.
Yeah.
One of those places is in Alberta, and we're doing our best to preserve it. And if that Canadian dream can only live on in a free and independent Alberta, then so be it. But we're not going to stand here with a shackle around our ankle tied to the anchor known as Laurentia and go down with the ship. We're just not. And we tried, by the way, to do it Jason Kenney's way. We tried to do it Stephen Harper's way. We've tried. Jason Kenney was premier for 4 years. What did it get us? Absolutely nothing. Our civil liberties stomped all over as though he were a liberal. No pipelines, no nothing, strongly worded letters, lawsuits that didn't go anywhere. Enough. Yeah. We tried it his polite way. We're going to do it our way now.
And if the referendum is unsuccessful, Sheila, I strongly urge that we change the name of Alberta to Charlie Brown province, because like Charlie Brown, he always believes Lucy is going to hold the football for him to kick. Maybe this time it'll be different. And well, Charlie Brown, he's the ultimate loser in comics. If you want to be a loser, vote for Canada.
Whatever happens on referendum day, and it could go either way, according to the polling data, which means everybody's got a lot of work ahead of them. But whatever happens, even if you are an ardent federalist, do you not want the leverage that Quebec has over Confederation? Do you not want that form of autonomy? This is your one chance, my federalist brothers and sisters in Christ, to send, as we say on the billboard truck, these bastards in Ottawa a lesson. Even if you don't want to leave, This is your one chance, and you won't get it for a generation again. You might never get it again, actually, because if we get anywhere near close, they're going to start changing laws. So take it, leave it all on the dance floor, because you won't get this opportunity again.
100%.
I think we should hit an ad break, say goodbye to our friend Kelly, who does have a report coming up at Rebel News. I haven't watched it in its entirety yet, but that's my next thing that I have to do after I get off the air. Kelly, before we go, thank you so much for joining us on the show again and the advocacy work that you do on behalf of Saskies. Tell us how people can find you out there on the interwebs.
Well, I don't do a lot, or I haven't done a lot in the last few years. I was kind of on the sidelines, but I have rejoined the wild west of social media, which is X, of course. So you can find me on X if you want. I'm at KellyLam86. I do have a YouTube channel. Might poke around there and post occasionally. Yeah, just kind of getting back into the swing of things. So it's a pleasure to come on and chat with you lovely folks and, spew off some of my highly unpopular Canadian opinions.
Yeah, get it under your system.
And before we say goodbye to Kelly,
good.
Sheila, I've got a text message from Lady Menzoid. I love Kelly Lam's hair. It's right up there with Tracy Wilson of the CCFR. So I guess, Kelly, my parting question, I'm going to channel my inner Tom Clark interviewing Justin Trudeau. The question on millions of minds of Canadians right now is, what shampoo do you use?
Wow, this is high praise. First of all, Tracy Wilson, that's a good compliment. I actually use an Albertan brand. I use an Albertan brand called Routine. It's out of Edmonton.
There you
Good
go.
Stuff. So,
Okay.
And it's all natural, baby. It's all natural.
I would think nothing less.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Lady Menzoid, by the way. Much appreciated.
All righty. Let's say bye to Kelly. We'll hit an ad break late in the show, and then we'll clean up our chats, and then we'll wrap it up.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Are you 18 to 30, curious, ambitious, and tired of cookie-cutter journalism? Then listen up. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. I'm the chief reporter at Rebel News, but I'm also the president of the Independent Press Gallery. And I'm excited to tell you that applications are now open for the 2026 Student Journalism Conference, a 3-day, all-expenses-paid training experience in Toronto, August 28th to 30th. That means your travel, your hotel, and your meals are all covered. You just bring the drive. This isn't a lecture hall snooze fest. It's hands-on reporting, real-world skills, practical training, and direct access to experienced independent journalists who know how the media landscape in Canada actually works. This year's theme is citizenship and civil liberties, two issues that matter now more than ever. You'll also compete in a live collaborative reporting challenge, creating a real journalism project with a chance to win the grand prize. And here's the big part. Past graduates are now working in independent media organizations all over Canada, building careers, breaking stories, and making a difference. Only 20 applicants will be selected, so the competition is real. Deadline to apply is June 14th. If you've got grit, curiosity, and something to say, apply now at studentjournalismconference.com. Canada needs more journalists who ask tough questions. Maybe one of them is you.
You know, Sheila,
Okey-doke.
I just had an epiphany about ladies who are right of center and hair, like Kelly Lam and Tracy Wilson. You notice you don't see any with the pink and blue dye jobs, right? You know, I mean, isn't that like, maybe we should be thankful for that. It's kind of like when you're out in the woods and you see a critter and it's got a white stripe down the tail, you know to back off, bucko. That's a stink bomb about to happen. So, but can you explain why that is? Because it just dawned on me.
Well, David, that's how I know you don't watch the show frequently when Lisa and I are on, because this is nature. We call these people poison dart frog people, Lisa and I do. And you know, in nature, when something is brightly colored, it's potentially poisonous and you should
Yes.
probably stay away from it.
Yes.
That's what these people are telling us. It's just nature. And I'm glad. It's how I know to cross the street, go walk on the other sidewalk, don't interact, at least on politics and religion. And it's just a big warning sign, and we should take it.
For sure. And I mean, Tracy Wilson, that is Farrah Fawcett Major's
She's
hair
got a
from-
coif that hell wouldn't have.
It's unbelievable.
Like, great hair.
Did you ever hear that joke why Lee Majors beat up the plumber?
No.
I cannot say the punchline. I'll get in trouble.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. I don't even want you to text me it afterwards. All right, let's get to the chats and wrap up the show.
Okay.
So Barry Stroud, 4056 is a Rebel News Plus subscriber now. He's got a membership on the channel, and that'll give him access to all of our premium content, my weekly paywall show, Ezra's daily show, all of our documentaries, behind the scenes stuff. So welcome, Barry. Sasquatch Chronicles, it's our American friend. $9.99 short timer. A coworker finds a better job and has 2 weeks left. You tell your coworker, I can't believe the company has this new policy, and your coworker's like, meh, who cares? That's Alberta. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, kind of like complaining about the paint job on the Titanic post hitting
Right.
the iceberg, right?
Right. Snowy Roof gives us $5. I was looking at a map of the U.S. proposed pipeline, and it connects to Keystone XL, which is completed to the border on the Canadian side. I did see if it connected to Keystone XL, but I do know that it begins at Hardisty, which is where Keystone XL would have connected. It's a new proponents, because it's a Canadian company and an American company that are in partnership on this. And of course, President Trump is the drill baby drill president. So he wants those oil and gas prices to come down in the Midwest. And, you know, those Midwestern refineries are tooled for Canadian heavy oil or Venezuelan heavy oil. And I would much rather them be with access to Canadian oil. And I think our American friends would like that very much too. So
Yeah, and I would much rather our country not have to rely on imports of energy from Egypt.
Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria. Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yep. It's crazy. I mean, Medicine Hat, I should just tell you this. Like, we have so much natural gas here. Like, everybody knows the phrase that maybe not everybody knows, because I had this discussion where somebody didn't know the other day, but like Medicine Hat was once said to have all hell for a basement because the natural gas seeps out of the ground.
Wow.
We have coal that you can just kick out of the ground in our riverbeds. Like, we don't, in the interior part of Alberta, as opposed to the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains, where it is like tunnel mining for coal. But in the interior part, the coal is so close to the surface that we just like drag the soil and get the coal and then backfill everything in and reclaim it. And we can't even use that, let alone the oil we want to sell everybody. I mean, it's hard to imagine that you would do this to the world's third largest proven oil reserves, but here we are.
It's amazing. I mean, God bless those dinosaurs, but in Alberta, 'twas all for naught, their extinction event, eh, Sheila?
Yeah. You know, you've been dallying with an extinction event of this show several times with some
Please, I scare
nearly tasteless jokes, right?
No, but I'd be well trained. I did not say the punchline to why Lee Majors beat up the plumber.
Thank you. It's because I was staring daggers through the camera.
Like a Gorgon.
Yes. Snowy Roof gives us $5 and says, my question is, what is happening with Keystone XL on the U.S. side, which was very close to connecting to the Canadian side before Biden shut it down? Yeah. I mean, Keystone XL was approved and then unapproved and then approved again and then unapproved again. I made the joke that it was like that Seinfeld episode where they got vasectomies, then didn't get vasectomies, and then got vasectomies again. Because that lady was like, maybe I want kids, maybe I don't want kids, maybe I want kids, maybe I don't want kids. That's how it feels with Keystone XL. So I'm not sure if this new pipeline connects with the existing completed portions of Keystone XL, but it does begin in the exact same place. So I wish I
Although
had
right
more
now, Sheila, as I understand it, U.S. is a energy net exporter since Trump got back in office. Kind of a new sheriff in town, because not only did Biden shut down Keystone XL, that was the first order of business once he was inaugurated. Couldn't wait to sign that cancellation order. Unbelievable.
Yes. And then Trump, he signed it back into life. And then he also signed the Dakota Access Pipeline into life. And then the pipeline company sued Greenpeace and won. Like a massive judgment. I think Greenpeace might go under because of it. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch.
Miracle.
Yeah, couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. It was like the Coastal GasLink mayhem, but for months at a time. You know, Coastal GasLink, when the marauding band of axe-wielding hippies came and destroyed a work site and nobody ever really got arrested. Like, it's the woods, go get them, right? But the Dakota Access Pipeline, they were burning equipment. It was, the National Guard was brought in. Like, it was bad. Biden didn't do anything. No, not Biden. Biden really didn't do anything about it. Nobody was ever held accountable. The court case wound its way through the courts. And now Greenpeace is just hit with like a multi-gajillion-dollar judgment. So, and Obama, it all started under Obama. Trump got elected, signed it into life. Nobody was ever held accountable under Biden. But now these people had the hammer dropped on them, and I love it.
Sheila, when did Greenpeace move away from their original mandate of saving the whales, piloting their little rubber dinghies in front of Japanese harpoon ships? I mean, when did they go from that to shutting down countries trying to become energy independent?
Once they started getting money from big fake environmental charities in San Francisco,
gotcha.
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the Tides.
Tides, or Make Way, they call themselves now, because they made their own name too toxic through their bad behavior. Okay, I think that's the show, David.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sheila. That was a very fun time with Kelly Lamb.
Fast.
It went very fast. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you for so many of you making a donation today. That's how we keep the lights on. I believe myself and Sheila Gunn Reid. Are you back on Monday, Sheila? You're not on some caper?
It's Friday. Things move quickly over the weekend, but tentatively now, yes, I am here on Monday.
That's true. Hopefully my stomach ache will be over by then, but I think it might still be lingering for some pharmaceutical I'm taking right now. Hint, hint. In any event, folks, have a wonderful weekend. And as always, stay safe and stay sane.
On crime, the illusion is that he's announced changes, but has not changed a single word in the criminal code. But he is going ahead with the largest confiscation of private property by pursuing lawful and law-abiding firearms owners instead of going after the real criminals. And then there's the censorship agenda. Now remember, the illusion was that Mark Carney was not as woke as Justin Trudeau, and certainly he is not quite as nauseating, but in reality is that he has appointed a minister of heritage who said that clergy should be charged for quoting politically incorrect sections of the Bible, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Romans, and then they passed a law C9 that would allow such charges to be laid. The illusion was that he would be more moderate, maybe even a little bit conservative, but the reality is that he's not changed the Trudeau agenda, he has accelerated it. By all objective measures, the government is bigger and more costly and controlling than under Trudeau. The deficit is double. The bureaucracy has more tentacles that reach further into our lives than ever before. Nothing has changed. It is more cost, more debt, more immigration chaos, more of the same